There's a 99% chance that you're making one of the top 5 bass technique fails that I've seen in my many years of teaching 1,847 bass lessons, answering 16,955 student comments, and even analyzing 102 bass cover videos last week just to add gravity to this paragraph. I can confirm that every single noob bassist, and even a lot of intermediates, struggle with at least one, if not more, of the 5 big bass blunders. Now you might try, as many do, to solve all your technique issues using a bunch of separate exercises, but your practice routine quickly swells up into a bloated, hours-long mess. You get horribly bored after a week or two, your well of motivation runs dry. Welcome to technique practice hell. So here at BassBuzz Labs, I concocted one monstrously effective Blunder Buster exercise that'll get you out of technique practice hell with just 10 minutes of daily drilling. One killer riff that progresses through 5 levels, each dialed to specifically fix one of the 5 big bass blunders. And this sort of looks like beat poetry. From level 1, where literally anyone could make some easy gains, working up to the more advanced level 5, which will help you iron out all your technique fails. But is this just another gimmicky YouTube exercise? I wanted to make sure it really worked. So my students on the BassBuzz forum road tested it for you with a 2-week challenge. We'll see exactly how much they improved these technique fails at the end of the video. But before we get there, you really gotta fix this first blunder. It's a killer, and it catches basically every new bassist. Can you spot the difference in fretting technique between a pro playing a bass line and a novice playing the same thing? Yep, the difference, besides that Victor Wooten has a better hat, is flying fingers, the first big bass blunder. And flying fingers don't just make your hand look like a dorky noob hand, they also cause huge issues with the sound of your playing. Even in my pristine professional pause, flying fingers can totally make me sound like shit. So here's my normal playing. Sounds fine. And here's flying fingers how I used to do them when I started out. Check out the clunk and the mess that comes in. And at high speed, it gets even worse. And you might be doing this more than you realize. I thought Josh was massively exaggerating when he does his terrible flying fingers impersonation, but no, that is what my hands look like. So you really need to fix this. How do you do it? There are infinite boring exercises out there. I imagine you've seen a couple, and frankly, many of them are good until they send you into technique practice hell, dying of boredom. And one of the secrets to actually improving your technique is finding non-torture ways to practice, like the music-based approach you're about to take in level 1 of the Blunder Buster exercise. But to avoid flailing desperately during the exercise, you need to do some bare minimum prep with the fretting game 1 on, 1 off. First, hover all 4 fingers over some easy to reach frets, and now press down 1 finger at a time. Change up the order, increase the speed, get comfy, and that's 1 on. Now 1 off is the tricky bit. You press all 4 fingers down, and now lift 1 finger at a time. Like really just 1. This doesn't exactly mimic the movements of playing bass, but it'll develop your awareness and coordination. And if you can do that without too many stumbles, you're ready to nail the simple but still cool sounding level 1 of the Blunder Buster exercise. And level 5 is gonna sound even more badass. There's a free PDF in the description with full fingerings and practice routine suggestions. The starting goal here is to gradually get your fingers closer to the fretboard. As you get more advanced, you can even stay on the neck sometimes, like you see me doing. The next big bass blunder is particularly pernicious because it afflicts almost every bass student, but it's impossible to see. It's the difference between playing this and playing this. It's the exact same thing, but now everything hurts. Ow. Because blunder number 2 is fretting too hard. We all do it, here's why. When you're first learning bass, you have to actively focus on pressing hard enough to not get buzz, like the evil kind of bass buzz. It feels like a lot of effort, but your fingers quickly get stronger in the first month or 2 of playing. Then, just out of habit, you'll tend to keep fretting with the same perceived high effort, but now that your fingers are stronger, you'll actually be pressing harder than you need to just to get clean notes. As Sarah puts it, you might have a vice grip without realizing it. And any pressure beyond the minimum to not get buzz tires you out, makes it harder to play fast, and it just hurts. Good luck getting through something like I Want You Back if you're smooshing your fingers super hard into a piece of solid wood. Ow, ow, ow. So how do you fix an invisible bad habit to nail level 2 of the Blunder Buster exercise? You need some prep work that retrains how fretting feels. Once you do this, you'll feel more like Sarah did after a couple weeks of practice. Having it in my head to think about fretting pressure is really useful. I keep doing a mental check. The trick is to be an MVP and play with minimum viable pressure. I thought of that. So check it out. Rest your index finger on the 7th fret of the A string, but don't press down yet. And now try plucking that note, and it's not a note yet, right? So we know this is not enough pressure, duh. Now, if you add pressure gradually, you'll get to a rattling sound of the string on the fret. Once you get there, press just a tiny, tiny bit harder until you get a clean note. And now stay at that pressure and don't press any harder. This is how fretting should feel. It's less energy spent and less painful. So to test this out on level 2, I suggest going one note at a time, aim for minimum viable pressure on each note, latch onto that feeling, and that'll set you up to nail level 2 of the exercise. The longer you play, the more you'll go back to your usual pressure level, so you gotta keep reminding yourself. I still practice this even after teaching it for years. And it's totally okay to hang with levels 1 and 2 for some weeks before moving on. The point is to make progress, not perform a YouTube video. Once you fix these first 2 fails, your fretting hand will look solidly good and feel solidly also good. But as you know from having a human body, there's a whole nother hand to think about. You might play something you think is gonna be easy, like I Wanna Be Sedated, first song I ever learned. But this next blunder makes a killer bass line like this sound like this. You hear the difference? The plucks became super uneven. Blunder number 3, which happens to basically everyone when they first learn alternate plucking. As you know from 5 million of my other bass lessons, we alternate plucking index and middle on bass, which gives you way more speed potential than just plucking with one finger. But these fingers don't know how to give you even volume until you train them up. And this issue is most obvious in a chugging bass line like I just played. Chugging just means you're rocking out driving notes, rim bim 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 bim. Honestly, you'll naturally get better at this over time as you practice plucking and develop coordination, especially with my comprehensive step-by-step beginner to badass course, which will give you a solid technique foundation with plenty of plucking practice, plus all the knowledge you need to understand songs and create your own bass lines. But why get better over time, patiently, when you can grasp for quick results with a targeted exercise? So to get ready to target your plucking in level 3 of the Blunder Buster exercise, you need to prep by developing some chugging control. First, do some uneven plucking intentionally and practice going loud, soft, loud, soft. Because uneven isn't bad, it's just not what you want sometimes. Once you can do that, flip it around and play soft, loud, 1 and 2, and now that both fingers can do loud or soft, you can try doing loud, loud, or go soft, soft. Mess around, try to find your weak spots, switch between the different patterns, and that awareness and control sets you up to nail level 3. Make sure you check the description for the free PDF, which has suggestions for your 10-minute routine, plus detailed fingerings, including how to actually nail the plucking pattern on this level. And now we've got the basic stuff out of the way, but this next bass blunder really sneaks up on you. Because you're jamming away, your technique is working, until all of a sudden... So what happened? His wrist is too bent, his plucking fingers are frantically trying to keep up, and it's 'cause he sucks at playing octaves. Oh, octaves, the glory you bring to our bass lines, from higher ground to uprising to Mario Underground theme. Why must you suck to play so much? Well, it doesn't actually have to suck. Level 4 is going to give you some serious octave practice, but before you can work on that safely, you must beware the wrath of duck wrist. This terrible thing that we do to our wrists when we're fretting octaves in particular. Quack, quack, quack. It hurts, but you can solve it even if you have small hands. Just make sure your strap is high enough so the neck's not too low down. Tilt the neck up so that it's even higher, and then put a little more bend in your fingers so that your wrist can be straighter. You can see in Sarah's before video how much bend she had in her wrist, which probably hurt. But after a couple weeks of practice, there's significantly less duck wrist. More on her progress at the end of the video. So if you noodle your way through level 4 of the exercise in slow motion, you should now be able to avoid duck wrist. But if you actually try plucking the notes, you're probably stumbling all over the place. Because sometimes you gotta go low, high, low, low. Sometimes it's low, high, sometimes low, high. It's just like, yikes. So to stop stumbling and nail this level, you need the rarely taught but highly necessary split finger technique. So check it out. Normally, your index and middle fingers hang out next to each other. You cross strings, and they move as a unit along with the wrist and the whole family. But when you're jumping quickly between the low and high notes of an octave, you need to split up the family. So the index stays by the low string and the middle stays by the high string. And this is the secret to getting speed and non-stumbles when you're jumping low, high on octaves. So back to the exercise. For low, high, low, low, you'll finger split for the first two notes, and then they unsplit for low, low. For the next octave pattern, finger split for all four, low, high, and then the final two patterns, there's no finger split needed since the notes are doubled up. Low, low, high, low, high. And with some patient practice, you can crush level 4. If you really keep showing up day after day, putting in small but consistent practice on all these fails, your technique will start to look pretty pro until you make this final blunder. Because your technique might seem perfectly good, but then watch what happens to the hands here. What happened? He's on a highway to hell with a classic death by speed, blunder number 5. When you push your speed, your technique inevitably backslides. And while your personal goals may not include shredding at some crazy level, plenty of popular iconic bass lines require a decent amount of speed to play. So getting all these techniques clean at speed matters, and that's why you should always start super slow and get really solid and gradually work your way up. Are you tired of me saying that in every video yet? But besides just starting slow, you can make speedy runs like the ones you'll play in level 5 easier by using some hand isolation. Because by working the hands one at a time, you get a single point of focus, which means less reinforcing your mistakes. So if you're staring at this and thinking, holy son of a, isolating your hands will make it much less overwhelming. Just rest your plucking hand on the strings to mute and start slowly going through the motions of fretting and kind of hum the bass line to yourself. You don't need to hammer on the notes audibly, just act as though you're fretting. This is a great way to put attention on flying fingers and minimum viable pressure while you work up your speed. Once that feels okay, mute the strings with the fretting hand and do only plucking. So look at what string the notes are on in the tab to figure out which strings you could pluck. Again, humming is really helpful. Notice where you have challenges with the plucking pattern, come up with a game plan. Again, I have a detailed game plan for you in the PDF. Make sure you're using the finger split technique where appropriate and work up your speed. And now with your hands both not sucking by themselves, it should be a much smoother process to get up to speed than going in cold. And you've got a shot at working your way through the final level 5. And after 2 weeks of daily practice, here's how much our friends on the BassBuzz forum busted their blunders. And now that your fingers aren't flying, you're plucking evenly, you can nail faster runs, it'll be way more fun to learn songs. Like the first 50 songs you should learn on bass. So, just like click on that now, okay? Bye. Ow. Okay, the door's actually this way.